Glad you could join us. This is our podcast, Three Old Friends, The Music Never Ends, with myself, David, my friend Jose, and my friend Mike. And a little bit of background, we do this because we love music. Back in the day, we used to make things called mixtapes. For some of you who don't know what that is, using albums and cassette tapes. And so we had the idea to bring this forward to 2023, now 2024, and do something similar. So we get together, we compile a playlist, we listen to the music, and then we get together and talk about it. So I hope you enjoy it. This installment is the eighth installment of us doing this. And the theme that we chose was to look back on 2023 and give some attention to and homage to those who have passed away, artists that we all know and love. And this would be a good opportunity for us to pick some of their music and sort of eulogize them by playing their music, thinking about them, and that's what we're going to do today. So the first song, I had the opportunity to pick the first artist. Each of us will have about 5 selections, so about 15 artists that we can pick. We'll probably miss some that you may have liked or some of your favorites, but I started this list with somebody called George Winston, who was a piano player and did a lot of the new age, and he was on the Windham Hill record label when he first was discovered. And I picked a song called Joy off of his album called December. And it's just a bright, upbeat tune that really gets you kind of going. It's not necessarily a upbeat, fast, thing. It's not something you can dance to, but it's such a he just gets to the essence of the themes that he writes about. And oftentimes those themes are about autumn or December or the seasons or the passing of the seasons. He also did some work with, he really loved the music of Vince Guaraldi, the one who did the music for the Peanuts. And so he also did put out a couple of albums based on the music of Vince Guaraldi. And so he did Linus and Lucy and those kind of things. But anyway, I started off with that. I hope you enjoyed it, and that was my way to kick it off.
Yeah. First, Happy New Year to both y'all. Yeah, and yeah, it was a great way to kick it off because it's fun to get back to listening to new stuff getting back into this, mixtape kind of thing because you get, back into the new music, and of course my morning walks, there's nothing better than listening to this song walking and it just being so uplifting and vibrant. It's like, oh yeah, joy, and it really reflects that in the music. So it's a great way to start the thing. And I'm no George Winston aficionado, obviously, like Dave pointed out. We also all know the Lucy and Linus and the what he did with that and the Peanut stuff, and his name was always one of those names that seemed to pop up when George Winston, special guest, and you knew he was a great piano player and the stuff that he did. But it was but I thought this was fantastic and a great way to start this mixtape. I keep calling it a mixtape, even though it's really not. But I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yeah, I understand that calling it a mixtape. I still call stuff albums or records. Like, does Dylan have a new record coming out? I don't know if it will or won't, but anyway, Happy New Year to you guys as well. And just a note for in full candor, there's been a bit of a lag between the last one of these we put out and this one. In theory, I guess this would have come out before or just after the new year. But then my body decided to say, you need to have a cold and then you need to have bronchitis. And so we've delayed it all, but besides maybe a little coughing today on this, it's all good. So George Winston, my knowledge of him goes back to the very late 80s. I don't know much about his music, except I had this Windham Hill sampler. And I think I got it because I knew I was into a girl who had Windham Hill, and I thought she'd be impressed to see it in my record collection. I haven't listened to it much since then, but the sampler, I do remember, I would try to listen to it at home and, give it a good try. And the it seemed to be something really good for cold winter days, which makes the song very appropriate right now. We're all in the maybe all below at least 30 where we are. So, but yeah, this song I like because well, I like how he fits in some Bach in there. The little you hear it as you go through a couple of times, and I wouldn't begin to pronounce the name of the piece of music, but that's from. But it also it's commonly used in weddings, that little bit of the music, and it was in my wedding. But he fits it really nicely in. I mean, he's doing a kind of lot of weaving and almost, I don't know how to describe it, like a lot of almost like a musical river. It's just like kind of going along, and then this kind of weaves into it, and then it goes back to. Anyway, I thought it was great. I appreciate it. And go right into mine, which I was really sorry to hear that Jeff Beck died last year. I have a lot to say about him, but I don't have that much time. But I this song is it's called "Cause We Ended as Lovers," and it was written by Stevie Wonder. I believe he wrote it for his then wife Sarita, who sang on some of his music. Like I think, that "If You Really Love Me" song. I think she may be on that. I may be wrong, but she did sing on a couple of songs. She put out a solo record, excuse me, and he wrote that for her. But he also, about the same time that was happening, he gave the song to Jeff Beck. Said, "You recorded on your record. That's great." He did give another one on there too, which escapes me right now. And Stevie played uncredited on that song. But this song is, I'll kind of come back to this in a second, but it's kind of a move from what he had been doing before, which is more blues and rock, into kind of fusion jazz. And this was the first of his records I got. And I got it after I saw him in concert and was just blown away. There was this benefit concert in Dallas when I was still in high school. I think they called it the British Invasion, but it had some other name. So it was a benefit for Ronnie Lane, who was with the Faces and recorded a record with Pete Townsend. That's one of my favorites. And he got MS, and he was very sick with it. Although he lived many years after that, and he continued performing. But to help raise money for him, they had this concert, and it stopped in a few cities. One was Dallas, saw it at Reunion Arena. Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, I believe Kenny Jones, who was the drummer for the Who. I'm going to blank out, but there were Joe Cocker. I mean, there were a bunch of them, bunch of folks, and they all did their little bits. But I had never seen Beck, but well, I'd seen Clapton before that. But Jeff Beck comes out and does this stuff, and it's just like it's all this jazz fusion stuff, and he's just out there having a blast. And it was just like I went with a friend of mine. We're both like, who is this guy? Where did this come from? I've heard of him, the Yardbirds, whatever. But and so this record was the first one he did kind of in that, with that kind of sound. Went on to do a couple of others and then moved on to some different types of music. But this one was called, I'm going to blank out now, Blow by Blow. And the record was produced by George Martin of the Beatles. And a story that I learned about this record, supposedly Jeff Beck was a tremendous perfectionist. He would come in and re-record. They'd put all the tracks down. He'd come in and re-record stuff. And he called up George Martin one day. He's like, "I've got a better idea for a guitar part on this. Let's go back in the studio." And George Martin told him, "It's already in the record stores. We're not going to be able to do that." So I could go on and on about these records, but the only other thing I'll say, he started in the Yardbird. Well, he kind of first came to prominence in the Yardbirds band that also had Clapton. I think he kind of overlapped with Jimmy Page. What is it? Harpful of Soul. He played on a lot of their songs that became hits. One of them was Heart Full of Soul, which is one of my favorites. He went on to play with a bunch of other people, Rod Stewart, and tons of different bands that or different iterations. And like I said, I could go on and on, but I'll stop there.
Well, Jeff Beck, I don't know a lot about, as I've said in other podcasts. You know, it wasn't one I collected or listened to. I did note that it's been over a year now, so he passed away early in 2023. And again, I don't know. I'm not real familiar. I can't speak to a lot of his music. I just know what I like when I listen to it. And you've already mentioned all the great guitarists and things that he's respected with that group of guitarists. Listening to this song, I wasn't familiar with this track or anything, but to me, it was like his instrument and his guitar was like a vocal track almost. Like it's saying to me, like he could express the things on there without words, just with his instrument, just with the guitar. And there's very few musicians, I think, that can do that. There's a handful of them that have that signature sound that they can do that. And so I was real impressed. And like I said it before on other ones, I'll probably start dabbling and listening to more of Jeff Beck because of your influence, because putting him on a couple of our playlists already. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was a great track, especially after the first one. You know, just an instrumental masterpiece, really.
Right. I'm going to echo that it is a perfect combination of the two instrumentals to open up this. You have, you know, the joy, the piano, and then you come with Beck, and just fantastic. You know, I think we've talked plenty about Jeff Beck, and I do remember those pictures Mike used to have. So there is verification that he did go to that concert, and I was always a little jealous, like, oh my God, you got to see all these guys play. So, and like I said, you know, we've talked about how Beck, I consider it completely underrated. I mean, if you say top 5 guitarists, very few will mention Beck, even though he probably should be. And I know this was a really good song because it passed my mom's test. I often sometimes play it in the car just to try to sneak it, and she's like, "Oh, I like this song." So in Spanish, but you know, so if you can get that past my mom, who's 84 years old, you know you're doing something right. So just a fantastic way, like I said, to open up this mixtape. Both those songs were hand in hand. So of course I just went completely different and found no instrumental and went with Robbie Robertson's Broken Arrow. Now when we were picking songs, could easily have picked songs from the band that he had written, that he had played on, you know, all the classics, The Wait, you know, Cripple Creek, Makes No Difference. But I thought he should be represented with his only solo album and the song Broken Arrow, because whatever you think of the band, whatever you think of his falling out with the band, and there's a whole history of that and the whole falling out with them, and whether he, you know, kept royalties from it. Anyway, I thought it was better if he stood alone, because he not only did he make a huge impact with the band, but also this solo album was really a good album. When I got it, I remember playing it extensively when I first got it. I thought, oh, he should be playing more music, and of course this was the only thing. But he was always active in movies and stuff, and just recently Killers of the Flower Moon, he was active in that and that soundtrack. So Rob Robinson's always been a favorite of mine, you know, and so I thought this song was a pretty good way. And just another interesting fact is I heard the Grateful Dead play it, because they used to play this song when they were in concert. So I actually heard this before he had played it. I heard it on someone had, you know, when you trade tapes, you get that. I was like, oh my God, someone's singing Broken Arrow. Why is someone singing this song? So it was Phil Lesh. But anyway, there you go. Grateful Dead, always my jam band. So.
Yep. Let's see, here we go. Excuse me. Yeah, I had this record too. I think this was around the time, well, I think we were still making tapes. This is like 88, you know, and I was in my second place in Austin. So I'm pretty sure we were still doing it. I don't know if we put anything off of this, but I bought this record too and played it like crazy. This song in particular, I may be wrong, but I think Peter Gabriel had something to do with it.
Play keyboards on it.
Okay, yeah, and you can hear that, you know, and a little bit in the music, but it's his song. It's Robbie Robertson's song. And the other thing, great thing about this is because I don't know if he ever actually sang lead on anything with the band. I don't know everything about them, but I don't know much about them, frankly. But you know, he was such a great talent with the songwriting and you know these other vocalists and instrumentation and musicians, excuse me, instrumentalists. Were so talented in their own right. It really is good to put this out this way. I mean, focus on this record. It's American Roulette, I believe,
Right.
which is also one of the songs on the record. If you haven't heard it, I highly recommend it. But yeah, Robbie Robertson. Um, Personally, I understand maybe he sometimes didn't treat people right in some ways, business partners, but he was a huge talent, and it's a great loss.
Yeah, when you put the song on it, I immediately thought of the Rod Stewart version of it, that I remembered that. But then I also remembered shortly after that hearing this around that same time. Again, I don't know that I had that album. I don't know if Jose had it, but I remember hearing this cut and hearing a few of the songs on that album at the time. It's yeah, he's good. I guess I could go back to the previous playlist and just gush about how I liked This Must Be Christmas, Must Be Tonight, you know. I'm still listening to that into the new year. No, yeah, obviously all the great things you did with the band and as well, is going to be missed. I did note that he had turned 80 years old. Not sure we want to mention everybody's age and you know whatever, but I kind of jot that down sometimes just because it's interesting to see that a lot of these musicians and artists continue until they die. I mean, all the way up until, and we'll make some mention of that later on with some of my artists that I have. But yeah, I love the Robbie Robertson selection. And then and also noted that he's Canadian, and that went real good with the next artist that I selected, and that was Gordon Lightfoot, who, sorry that Robbie Robertson is from Canada, but there's nobody in the country of Canada that trumps Gordon Lightfoot. He is Mr. Canada, and he has probably one of the most famous Canadian, with exception of maybe Rush, um, that's ever come out of there. And he was just prolific through his whole life, writing songs, recording albums over and over again. Yes, he had several hit songs, you know, Carefree Highway, Sundown, If You Could Read My Mind. You know, the list goes, the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, rainy, rainy day people. I mean, all these just these great hits that he had over the many years, and kept reinventing himself and kept redoing things to get hit songs over the years. And when he passed away, he was 84 years old. And I hate to say that, you know, I never went to go see him, and he probably came fairly close, or was, you know, in the state of Colorado over the last several years. There were several times where I thought, oh yeah, I should go see him, put it on my bucket list, and then I never did. And even as late as this last year, when his voice is going, and he puts out a new album last year and was touring again, and I started looking, and I think he was going to come to like Telluride or somewhere in Colorado, and I was going to, you know, try to get tickets and go. And again, I'm a day late and a dollar short or whatever. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you ever have somebody like that or an artist on your bucket list, don't wait, because eventually they're going to be gone, and we're going to be sad that we didn't get a chance to see them. So anyway, I picked a song called Don Quixote, and it's just one of my favorite Gordon Lightfoot songs. Maybe it's not one of his hit songs, but it is one that I've played a lot of times over the years, and just really like it. So I hope you did too.
Yeah, I'm sure you played it before for me, and but I don't remember it. But of course, Don Quixote means a lot to anyone who's a Spaniard, like myself, who's half Spanish. So of course, and like I've told you all before, I had to study Don Quixote in Spanish. I had to do a 10-page paper in Spanish about Don Quixote. So I believe in Don Quixote. I have little Don Quixote statues and stuff like that because I'm a firm believer, of course, in there's a little Don Quixote in all of us, always chasing windmills, that kind of thing. You know, the whole symbolism thing of that aspect. But of course, and of course goes great with this song, and I think Gordon Lightfoot captures the essence of that, you know, really well. It's more, you know, of course it could be about Don Quixote, but of course to get a little deeper, it's about really everybody, you know, chasing windmills, doing this, oh, you know, standing up for what Don Quixote thought he believed in, which is chivalry, dignity, that kind of stuff. So it was a great to listen to the song. Dave's always had the Gordon Lightfoot for sure. I can vouch for that. I've heard plenty of Gordon Lightfoot in my life in Dave's room. So just a great little song, and you know, it became one of my favorites on this for sure because of my relationship with having to, you know, study Don Quixote. So
Yeah, to be honest, my knowledge of Gordon Lightfoot has been limited, I believe, to the songs you mentioned. But I love them. I mean, always seem like there's kind of like a sadness to them. And for some reason that draws me sometimes, that part of my personality. But I loved his music, and other people covered him, like Johnny Cash, near the very end of his life, did these records with the producer Rick Rubin, um, uh, like I think they're the American Sessions or something like that, and he covered "If You Could Read My Mind," and it was in this, you know, very gravelly voice like he had at the very end of his life, and that was a very moving, but it drew me back to the Gordon Lightfoot and reminded me how much I liked that song in the first place. I was very young when it came out, and so it wasn't necessarily the focus of my life at the time, but my musical taste at the time, but it was everywhere. And boy, I'm getting off. That's Gordon Lightfoot. I mean to be back on the song, which I had never heard before. This song I'd never heard before, but it's awesome. I mean, I too, like Don Quixote. I've read most of the book. It's a very big book, and it was assigned for a college course, and I got a good way through it. And it's still on my shelf with the intent of finishing. But it's a great story, and he goes into some of those details. You know, I like the part about shouting across the ocean uh, to the other shore, and holds this rusty sword and this blade and tilting. I'm sorry, this cross and tilting at windows and windmills. And but then the guitar playing too. It's like I don't remember. This is acoustic, and I'm not sure if there was electric. You know, I can't thinking back to the song till now. I don't know how much of that was acoustic or electric. But this is really good picking. You know, finger picking and all that, and it was very enjoyable and makes me want to explore beyond my very shallow knowledge of Gordon Lightfoot. Oh, I will add one more thing. You left out, in my mind, another prominent Canadian, actually two, but Neil Young, um, and Joni Mitchell. So there's a
never
bunch
heard
of
of
good there's a bunch of good Canucks that contribute, but he was like, I guess, the consummate one.
And shove off hose head, eh? Those guys were good too.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I went on to a guy who's I guess more people hear the music more think of him of Ireland. He was actually born in England. Shane MacGowan, who died pretty late in the year. He was with the Pogues. If you've seen any of these other videos, you probably have a little background on the Pogues now, because this will be the third one of their songs I put on. One was the Christmas mix, and the other was If I Should Fall from Grace with God. But this song is Dirty Old Town, which, if there could be something called a Pogues hits, you know, they got radio play that was especially big in concert. it probably is this one. I saw a video last week of a show. It wasn't Wembley. It was during the Live Aid thing. In addition to what they had at Wembley in the United States, they had some other, like there was something in Australia and something I believe somewhere in Ireland. And so the Pogues played that. You know, they had 3 or 4 songs, and this is the one that seemed to really well. The audience, I mean, I don't know, the rowdy Irish were way into everything, but they were definitely the song really kind of drew the crowd out. It's I think, you know, you can say a couple things about the guy. He died relatively young. He was in his 60s, I believe, but he had been in ill health for many years, and you could just look at him. I mean, he he had been addicted to drugs. He'd been just about any drug you could name. He had been an alcoholic. His parents gave him Guinness when he was 5 to help him sleep, and that's no way to start a life. But and that kind of dogged him to the end. But through all that, he wrote some what I consider poetry. If you listen to the words in some of these songs, I was really had a hard time picking the song because there were others that, like there's one called "A Pair of Brown Eyes," which is it's just an amazing song, but it's so bleak. I didn't want to put it on here, but look that up. "A Pair of Brown Eyes," and the lyrics, it's just the words. It's poetry, and he sings with this gravelly, um, clearly road worn voice. The let's see, I heard like some lines are like, um, I saw a train set the night on fire. I heard a sigh rise from the docks. Spring's a girl on a something night. Anyway, or a girl, yeah, whatever. Anyway, I do want to read. So he died, and then he was his funeral was December 8th, which was I saw the funeral on YouTube. It was really
Watched that.
really good. Like, so what?
I watched
So
that too. I saw.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was really good.
it was. I mean, and just like all kind of like Nick Cave played a song, and the Dubliners, and they mentioned one thing, that he did a song with Sinead O'Connor. I couldn't tell you what it is right now, but she's also one of the people who died this year. And they pointed out that it's fitting that this service is on this day, which was Sinead O'Connor's birthday, December 8th. It's also the day John Lennon was killed. But yeah, what was I gonna say? There was something else. Oh, I just want to read one more thing, and I put down a quote. This is from after he died. Tom Waits said, "Shane MacGowan's torrid and mighty voice is mud and roses, punched out with swaggering stagger. Ancient longing that has blasted all to hell. A bard's bard, he may cast his spell. May he cast his spell upon us for all forevermore." So anyway, I think that's a good place to end it. But I'll lay off the Pogues for a while, but you can bet if we do many more of these, they'll show up again.
No, you don't have to stop playing it. I liked it. Like I've mentioned before, I like that Irish sound, the Celtic sound. There's something about it that draws me in every time. And I like this song. I'd never heard it and whatnot, but again, it's classic Irish folk tune, right? That you would think that was written in 1568 and played, sung for generations, and passed down from generations because it sounded kind of like that, right? It's just that the same feeling of it. And so no, I liked it, and he like I said, sounds like he lived a rough life. I'm not sure, was he producing a lot of music at the end here, or was he kind of done? But yeah, so I don't know if he was, but I'm certainly going to continue to go back and listen to the older stuff and the stuff he did with the Pogues.
Yeah, if I can answer that question, he did. He went back. The Pogues kicked him out for his. I mean, they were some rowdy guys, and I should mention a lot of great musicians in there and other songwriters. But they kicked him out because of his in a band that drank heavily. He was just beyond the pale, and he had a couple of bands he formed in and around that, and then he came back to the Pogues, and they did one final tour. And I didn't mention this, I actually got to see them with him. This would have been early 2000s, and it was just amazing. It was awesome. And one of his stage props is always a bottle, was always a bottle. And I'm pretty sure it wasn't just a prop, but he was out there with a bottle and he was doing all this stuff. He clearly looked even worse. He had I think a toupee on, and most of his teeth were gone at that point, but they were still just amazing, even in his adult state. So yeah, and then after that, he didn't really do much else. He got married and never really quite, his health sort of improved, but never quite kicked to the habits.
Now, in every one of these things that we do, these set lists, these mixtapes, there's always a group that like, oh, this song, oh, I'm not gonna, for some reason, subconscious, I'm not gonna like the Pogues. The Pogues aren't gonna be it. But then with this one, I found myself waiting for this song, looking forward to this song. I mean, it really draws you in. I mean, you can feel the whole scenery of that, the despair with he's kissing his woman, but he's in this dirty old town, the juxtaposition of all that going together. It really is an impactful song. And I kept telling myself, the Pogues, I'm not gonna, now there's just no way I'm gonna get, I always thought there were some, oh, people like them for whatever reason, or they're, some punk band, it's cool to like the Pogues, so to speak, but not at all. This is one of those songs that really, I gravitated towards and look forward to. And initially, when it first come on, you're like, oh, that's right, this is on. When initially, to be honest, I never thought I would like any of the Pogues songs, but see, that's how you learn. So, a fantastic song, like, and yes, don't stop putting on the Pogues. You can always put that on. It's really good to listen to those songs. So. And then, of course, mine was a little different. My little heavy metal phase. I've always had a little heavy metal phase. Dave can attest to that. And one of the ones I had was a guitarist called Bernie Marsden, who's not really well renowned in the world of even in the world of heavy metal, much less guitarist. He's a blues guitarist, but he was with Whitesnake before Whitesnake became what Whitesnake became. I think y'all understand what that means. Before they were. Whitesnake, when they first formed, was Bernie Marsden with members of Deep Purple like David Coverdale, which I'm a big fan of, probably one of the reasons I got the album. John Lord and Ian Pace. John Lord, the keyboardist, Ian Pace, the drummer. Anyway, they formed this band, Whitesnake, and their first 3 or 4 albums are really, really, I think, were spectacular albums. Not the greatest, but they're, it's good music. And this song, Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City, is actually a cover. I used to own the live album of this, and they used to sing this song. It's a Bobby Bland cover. Y'all know the blues singing, and I think they just do a fantastic job. One of the reasons I really like this song, it really captures not only Bernie Marsden, who was a great guitarist and was often overlooked because he never fit the role of a hair band guitarist. He was pretty low key. Was the electricity in the audience during this song. We've all been to a concert where you feel that electricity, you feel that energy. And I think this song kind of captures that. So when I used to listen to it a lot, and believe me, I listened to it a lot, it always reminded me of how much fun concerts can really be and how Bernie Marsden really was. Of course, Whitesnake went on to become whatever they became. They let Bernie Marsden left the band. So, but I thought it was a nice tribute to him. So that's one of the reasons I put this this song on.
Yeah. I'll just get this out of the way at the beginning. I never really had much interest in Whitesnake, but I believe it was mainly because of their later iteration. The hair bands, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of musicians I like that had long hair and, the tight leather and all that. But that aside, this guy, with the early stuff, this song surprised me. And yeah, I'm a big Deep Purple fan. My knowledge basically is one record, Machine Head, but and I know that not everybody involved with this and it, you know, whatever. But this song surprised me. I liked it. I like the blues thing. It was not what I was expecting. Again, to be completely honest, when you said White Snake, I'm like, okay, we'll see. I changed my tune. This is a great live song, and I know what you mean about the the audience participation, and it didn't take him much. He just like kind of like your turn, and then they all are just like they're into it, you know. So I probably won't listen to any later Whitesnake anytime soon, but I will look into this. And of course I know David Coverdale, and so yeah, respect his music as well. But it was great. I cover a song, that's fine. It's they made it their own.
Yeah, you know, I've got a little metal in me too, and I have to thank Jose for that influence probably more than anything. Because when we started first listening to music, it was mainstream stuff, and you know, I thought, you know, okay, maybe Stairway to Heaven, ooh, you know, or some, you know, one or two tracks from an iconic bands or whatever. But Jose was the one who started going, hey, there's this thing called Deep Purple, and there's Black Sabbath, and there's, you know, some of these other ones that I didn't have no clue about when we first started listening to music. So definitely turned me on to a lot of that. Again, I don't think I bought any Whitesnake, but the genre and the stuff that you played for this Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City, I connect with that. I think this might have been the longest audience participation where he didn't, you know, where they carried it. At first, it's, you know, they usually do it like 2 times or 4 times because it's, you know, like a, you know, we'll come back around and we'll do it again, then we'll do it. And I think it was like 8 or 10 times that they just kept doing it. So that was probably longer than Freddie Mercury at Live Aid with getting the audience into it. But I couldn't name or pick Bernie Marsden out of a lineup, but as I started thinking about it, I listened to a band that he was in earlier in actually, no, it was UFO that he was in. But I went back and started thinking about the concerts and things I went to, and I'm pretty sure that they opened up for, I think, my very first concert I ever went to, because I went to Triumph, and I think it was Triumph and UFO.
I think you're right.
If not, it was one of the first, because it wasn't Van Halen and UFO, and that was one of my first or second. So I think it was Triumph and UFO that did that. So, you know, lo and behold, I probably saw him live, but didn't really know or appreciate who he was. But yeah, he's a great guitarist, great musician. Sad to have him go. And then it was my turn for the next selection, and I thought, man, I'm going to go continue in that vein. And so one of the ones that got left off the list was a guy named Miles Goodwin, who was another Canadian rocker who formed a band and played in the band April Wine. And they had a lot of hit songs there in the late 70s, early 80s, you know, where they had their big heyday. And so I almost put on a tune by him. And incidentally, as I was researching and looking for some of these artists, I also looked and came across the fact that he had just put out an album like this last year as well. And I thought, let me listen to see what Miles Goodwin's doing in 2023, right? And I was blown away by the artistry, the lyrics, the songs, his whole thing was just amazing. And so I started listening to some of it. I only listened once or twice, and I'm like, I circled 2 or 3 songs from his last album and was going to put one of those on. But then I thought, if I put him on, we're going to leave off some other iconic artist, right? That we're going to regret. And so I didn't go that vein. But if you get a chance, check out Miles Goodwin, and even the last stuff he just did. In fact, it was so good that I was like writing notes on it, like, man, that sounds like a tune David Crosby would write, or that sounds like I mean, just still very relevant and as an artist. So, but instead, I went the safe route and tried to pick an artist that I'd like to give some props to, and that was Jimmy Buffett. Now, I'm not a parrot head. Um, I didn't get into a lot of his music, didn't buy a lot of his albums, but I do know his top 10 hits kind of thing. I know his, Margaritaville and those kind of things. And this is one of those songs that I think is fairly well known as well. It's called Come Monday. And again, I didn't know a lot about his deep tracks and other things like that, but this is one of his most popular songs. He does a lot of stuff like, you know, the the beach scene and the whole thing with that. But he was a great artist. I think he was probably a little even underrated to the general population, but he sure had quite a bit of a following for sure. So next on the list was Come Monday, Jimmy Buffett.
Now, obviously, I'm not a parrot head. Just obviously, I listen to Fish. I listen to Grateful Dead, but so I've probably never been a parrot head, but I can appreciate the fans, and there's a reason why people like us are like we are when we become attracted to a group and follow them around, like people follow Jimmy Buffett around, like I follow certain bands around, is because in the end the music's good. Now I'm no Jimmy Buffett person, I couldn't tell you, but even when listening to this song, you're like, that's talent right there. That's a good song. That's talent. I can understand why people climbed on board, because I'm sure, I mean, obviously his reputation precedes him, that he had a lot of great songs, and people enjoyed that. And believe me, as a person who goes to Fish, I can appreciate people who do that and really get into the music and understand where Jimmy Buffett's coming from and are forgiving when there's a bad song, or they just support him loyally, you know. So I'm probably not gonna ever listen to Jimmy Buffett, and it's a shame that maybe at some course I could have been some parrot head, because I could see myself doing that, if I'd gotten into that kind of music, but I didn't. But I can understand it, and so it's a tough one, and I feel bad for all those people who had to follow him. It's like when Jerry Garcia died, the Grateful Dead. Now they extended it, but there was really nothing like that afterwards. I mean, Fish is close, obviously, it's close, but there was nothing like that, and I'm sure for Jimmy Buffett fans, their concerts, for them, that's their scene, and there's nothing like that, and that's hard to replace. So, but and like I said, going back to the song, just a fantastic song, well written song, enjoyed it immensely. You can tell talent.
Yeah, I know a person or two that were lifelong parrot heads, and it's like in the blood. It's like I want to in particular know if he was really, really, he was not feeling good, after this, after he died, and Buffett died. But I think when I was a kid and kind of even into my preteen years, I loved his music. But I think and then there's many songs. I mean, he definitely had that kind of Caribbean, seafaring, partying, whatever thing down. That was his niche. And unfortunately, I think Margaritaville may have ruined it for some people just because it was so overplayed. To this day, I can listen to a greatest hits of Jimmy Buffett, but I skipped that one. And he made a lot of money out of that whole Margaritaville thing, not just the song, but the whole chain of clubs or restaurants or whatever they are. And I'm sure there were other resorts and stuff. And from what I understand, he was a very nice guy. This song in particular, though, it's funny because it's one of his few songs that is not part of that genre. No, that's not necessarily true that I know of. And I remember it when it came out. And for me, it's funny enough that you put this on, Dave, because it is closely linked to Gordon Lightfoot. This and I don't know, maybe Sundown or one of those other songs. They were out about the same time, and it was a certain part of my life. I think of this and that one, and this, it's a kind of a little sad song. You don't know if he's going to get back with this Come Monday. get back with this girl. And it's not necessarily something a preteen would listen to, but it stuck with me. And I think it resonates a lot more with me now. But yeah, I was kind of surprised. Yeah, I never heard he was ill or anything. But he seemed to be one of those that was like going until the very end, as far as I know. So thank you for the song. My next one is, I guess, on this list, maybe a little bit of a tangent in a couple of ways. First is Sinead O'Connor. She died this year. And then the song she's doing is You Do Something to Me, which is a Cole Porter song, which is, we don't play a lot of that kind of stuff in our mixtapes and stuff, with a few exceptions. And it was done for a record that came out in the early to mid 90s. It was Red Hot and Blue, and it was all Cole Porter songs, and it was intended. It raised money for AIDS awareness, and so I bought it at the time. But there were several songs on there I really liked, and they were all covers, obviously Cole Porter, but like U2 and other people. But this one by her, I don't know, it's something about it. It like at the time I didn't, I knew a little bit about Sinead O'Connor, but this one song, it's something about her voice, but she's doing this kind of torch singer kind of thing, and and yet she still goes into the I don't know how much of music people have heard, but her voice breaks in some songs. She do these kind of, her voice jumps around a bit, and sometimes when she really gets kind of loud and something, it gets almost raspy, and she does that in a couple of places in the song. So there's still a taste of that. I could have put other of her songs on there. The probably most obvious one is the one that Prince wrote and she recorded, Nothing Compares to You. And I was really tempted to, but honestly, that song has the Margaritaville syndrome for me. It's like, it's a great song. She does wonderful with it, but I have just heard it too many times. And so I thought I'd put something a little different on. She had some other stuff, The Emperor's New Clothes, and one called Jerusalem, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a major one. I never really had any of her records, but I just hear, and I was always impressed with her. She did some wild things in life, but she, on the other hand, she stood up for what she believed in. How we feel about what she did. She had clearly some mental health issues toward the end of her life. She lost a son, I believe, to suicide, and just a lot of rough stuff. So I could, like I said, I could name a couple of her songs, but this one I love so much, and I felt like she needed to be on this list. I wanted to put out there.
Well, that's two Irish singers on the same playlist there. So I don't know if we violate anything with that, but certainly she has a very distinctive voice. I wouldn't have minded Nothing Compares to You, just because I love that song. I like that song a lot. I know it's got all kinds of radio airplay, it's commercial and all that. That's probably the one thing I knew of her, was that, that and her shaved head, bald head. I would not make any crack like Will Smith did, or anything about, her having propecia or anything like that. She kind of could rock it with the bald head or whatever. But I think that one of the things that struck me was that she was only 56 years old. And when I looked up about, her obituary and everything, it's like said she died of natural causes. Okay, guys, we're north of 56, and that's kind of scary for me. Starts putting things in perspective, about longevity in life and everything. So, but yeah, I enjoyed her, a couple of her commercial tunes, and I'm sure she'll be missed.
Yeah, I'm kind of the opposite, actually. She never really entered my universe. I mean, obviously, we all know who she was. She did have the hit, although I can't really sing you that song. Nothing compared. I don't know why, but I draw a blank when I think about
Been 7 hours and
it. Nothing. So So it really wasn't. Now, first talk about the song, which is obviously great and fantastic. She has a great voice, and it'd be hard to kind of mess that song up. And of course, she's not going to mess it up. But really, her realm, but you can tell, again, she could sing, that's for sure. And of course, she was, stuck with the stigma of the whole, you know, tearing the Pope's photo up. We all have to get to relive that forever. But in the end, she was right. They needed to do something. And she was right, whether you liked it or not. And like Mike said, she stood up for something and stuck to it and took a lot of flack for that. Obviously, pretty much decimated her career for 3 or 4 years, where, she was just untouchable. But, just kept plugging away and doing the things and obviously, singing songs. The only other time I saw her was when Roger Waters did the Berlin thing. She sings Mother, which is a fantastic version of it. So yeah, she's gonna miss. Again, it's not my realm. It's like some of the people we miss, and I'm sure some of you talked about, like on our list, we don't have, I'll throw this out there. We don't have Tina Turner on there. Again, fantastic, highly influential, had a lot of great hells. They made a movie about her and her perseverance and her persistence, but that wasn't in my universe. I mean, you see her, you know who she was, she was talented, she had talent, she could sing, but it wasn't like I was lining up to go see Tina Turner, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, probably a bad thing because, obviously she was a major talent. So, but it's just one of those things. And it's kind of like Sinead O'Connor. It's like, it's just so much music out there that sometimes it's hard to gravitate towards one or really pick up on it. And then when it's gone, like you said, all you have is, what they left behind. So kind of glad that we do this and we get to, at least couple of times while we listen to this, because I go back and still listen to back of our mixtapes and just enjoyed the music. So my next one was
Tina Turner wasn't your private dancer then?
Come
Come on. What's love got to do with it?
what's love? But a secondhand emotion.
No.
Yeah, I wasn't by that point. I know Mark Knopfler either produced or played on one of those record, Private Dancer, I think. But I never got into stuff. I did like some of her early stuff. Mostly didn't get it. But of course, I kept her down as long as he could.
Yeah, I was gonna say, wasn't there some domestic violence stuff going on there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, leads right into our next violent man, Mr. Jim Gordon. Jim Gordon isn't a name that most people know because, well, he was arrested in 1983 and convicted of killing his mother. And then he just died recently. However, he was one of the best drum session musicians out there and was a part of so many great bands. It was Derek and the Dominoes. Whether you believe he came up with the piano portion or was it really he stole it from Rita Coolidge, y'all can debate that. But he was in so many bands, and he was in the Traffic, as a lot of y'all know, is one of my favorite groups of all times, and he was on one of the best albums of all times, Low Sparks of High Heeled Boys. I mean, he played, and I picked Hidden Treasures. It's just one of those songs. That song kind of gets lost because there's so many other great songs on that. He actually wrote Rock and Roll Stew, so helped write. He was a co-writer on that. But I mean, minus his schizophrenia and his crime, which is horrible. I mean, he was pretty much played with everybody, and it's amazing how much he contributed to the music scene when in his heyday. I mean, there wasn't many groups that he didn't play with, but it's a shame that sometimes this happens to people, and and mental health issues. Obviously, we're a little more aware, but this is one of these musicians, so.
Yeah, I remember when that happened. I wasn't when he was arrested. I had a subscription to Rolling Stone magazine when it used to actually be a pretty good magazine, and he there was a thing on that, and it was just. Then I heard what all he had played on, which just amazed me. I mean, you can't say everything, but so much stuff. I was kind of even wondering if he maybe was on one of these songs on this list that we didn't look at because he was on that many songs. The ones that just come to mind right off the top of my head. Well, he was with Derek and the Dominoes, so he played on Layla, those songs, and you mentioned the disagreement or whatever about that last part, the instrumental piece of it. He was on, I believe, All Things Must Pass, for the same reason. It was kind of some musicians shared between those two records. He was on at least one or two songs on Nilsson Smilson, including the Jump Into the Fire, which kind of most of the middle part is really long, kind of the drum kind of rhythmic thing, and that's him. But this song, yeah, so it is interesting because he had the schizophrenia, but I think it was also he did some pretty heavy drugs that kind of helped that along. You know, when you're in that kind of that kind of mental situation, you don't need, look at Sid Barrett. I mean, you don't need help. So that is a tragedy. He and then this song, this Traffic song, it's funny that it's called Hidden Treasure because it is like a hidden gem on that record to me. When you named the song before I listened to it, Jose, I couldn't remember which one it was, and that was the first Traffic record I had, and I listened to it tons and tons of times, but then as soon as you hear the first little bit, you're like, oh yeah, that's a good song. But it, Low Spark, High Hill Boys, and I'm not going to be able to think of a single other song on there, but there's several that are very good, prominent songs. And I guess it's a shame that this is a little buried, but anybody who listens to that record probably has heard this many times. So anyway, thanks for the Jim Gordon.
Yeah, I liked it too. It brought back again. I think I ended up buying this album, but it wasn't at the time that we were making tapes and things like that. But I remember you turning me on to Low Sparks, and then it was probably after that I went, oh, I found it in a bargain bin somewhere and picked it up, and so I read the same kind of thing, Mike. When you said it, I went, oh, Hidden Treasure. I think I know that one. And then when you started playing it was like so familiar. Like, wow, yeah, I remember that song now, and just brought back a lot of memories, and really enjoyed. Again, that whole album is phenomenal. But again, I wouldn't know which one Jim Gordon is. I would know, the Steve Winwood stuff and that kind of thing. I will say though, this song and the next 3 songs or so is kind of in this whole playlist was kind of the ones I really, really liked. I mean, I liked all the songs, and the combination of songs were good, but we got into this little groove here, starting with this song, and then it kind of towards the end of that song, they got that kind of little vibe going, and then I started thinking, what song would David Crosby put on that would have that? And Deja Vu kind of flows right into that, having that beginning of Deja Vu that's with a beat, the thing that they do with Graham Nash and Stephen Stills, and so I thought it went real good with the song. So I chose David Crosby was my choice, and I picked again probably one of his most famous songs, that and recognizable. I didn't go deep track or look for different things. I thought about playing a song off one of his solo albums because I had a couple of them, and the title track of one of his albums was "Oh Yes I Can," and I love that song. And so I was torn between that. I was going to put that song on, but it didn't go as well with the Hidden Treasures, so I went with Deja Vu. And yeah, it's sad. We know about David Crosby, and he had a sad life as well, a very difficult life, and got arrested for with drugs and weapons, and spent I don't know how many years it was in a Dallas prison, but it was a few where he was incarcerated, and when he got out, it actually changed him. When he got out, he got clean, he got sober, he got back together with his buddies and did some Crosby, Stills and Nash as well, and not sure that he ever went back to that lifestyle later on in his life. But looking at his music, even the last couple of 2 or 3, 10 years, he was cranking out music still at his age. I think he was 83 or something, or 82, and still just producing great music. And you know, so that was kind of a testament to who he is. And just love David Crosby's voice, loved his music with Crosby, Stills and Nash, even before that with the Byrds, and his solo stuff as well. So couldn't not put him on this list, and pay some tribute to him for the great musician he was over the years. And so sadly we miss David Crosby.
Yeah. What I introduced heavy metal to Dave perhaps, but he definitely introduced me to the Crosby, Stills and Nash and Young. And there are certain, I'd say about 5 songs in my life that I never get tired of them. And I think I remember the first time even Dave when he played this song for me, and that ever since then I have never gotten tired of this song. It's one of my favorite all-time songs. That and Wooden Ships, probably from Crosby, Stills and Nash. But this song has always been one of my. I even bought the album, even I think when you still had it, and I just had to have it just because I wanted to hear it so many times. And like I said, David Crosby a lot. I've read at least 4 or 5 books on Crosby, Stills and Nash. I read his autobiography. I think, you know, they produced a lot of great music. I always tell people that, you know, they're all kind of ego driven and they're kind of dicks to each other. They can't even decide how they even started. There's always that famous thing, but just played some fantastic music. And that song is just a prime example of that. And you know, like you said, we got to see them all together, so I'll never forget that. That was always one of my favorite concerts, the parts I can remember, of course. And so now David Crosby will definitely be missed. And like I said, I saw that they had that documentary on him, and he was still putting out music, you know, still doing it. Like Dave says, you know, these guys still keep cranking out. It's their life. It's what they do. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't even know what song to pick if this had been my choice, because the list is immense of David Crosby songs by himself or with other people that it would be such a hard time to decide. This one in particular, I've always loved this record. I counted in my top 10 favorite records, the whole thing, but this song in particular, it's a lot to think about in this song. And I'll get back to this in a second, but I guess we're talking about reincarnation here. And maybe is my understanding, it's how I hear it. And it kind of made me think, looking back over these songs, I don't know if this was intentional or just kind of somehow subliminally came through, but it seems like a lot of these songs maybe address like Don Quixote. And it's like this, he's a man at the end of his life, and like endings, and maybe a little mournful sound to some of them, or something that just like what comes next. So this song to me, it's like that's one way of looking at that question. You know, maybe we're coming around again. Maybe we've been here before. You know,
Let me
but
just
I
say,
love.
can I say
Yeah.
that it is eerie to hear we have all been here before, knowing that we've kind of all been here before. Just throwing that out there. And are making our mixtapes. It's eerie.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It throws you for a loop sometimes when I'm walking and I hear that. I'm like, that's right, we have all. It's weird that anyway. Just want to say that.
It's been a long time gone too, you know.
Right.
And albums come with her.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think of one to add, but yeah, it's not coming. But
Yeah.
helplessly hoping that I'll come up with something. All right. So the only other thing I'll add about David, I think I maybe you were living there too in Dallas at the time when he went through his legal troubles. I remember seeing, like, it was on the local news, and they show him being walked out of. He got busted, I think, backstage. He's playing a solo thing at a club, and they made him do the perp walk, if I'm remembering correctly. But I just remember his face. The guy looked like, you know, he could have dropped at any moment, and that would have been it. It was just, he was a very sick man, and that probably I'm sure that saved his life, getting busted. And he had the repercussions later. He had to get a liver transplant, if I remember correctly. Yeah, and then when we saw him was I'm maybe wrong on this too, but I think it may have been the first time that he played back in Dallas, and that was
That's
Crosby,
right.
Stills and Nash at an outdoor show, which I too have some fuzzy memories about. We'll leave it at that. But yeah, it was a great show. I wish I'd gotten to see them again. I never got to see him with Neil Young, but love that David Crosby. My next one was a band Procol Harum, which I kind of really started getting. Its song's called Salty Dog. The person who died, I'm gonna blank it. Oh, Keith Reed. The reason that it's not immediately coming to mind is because he was he was one of the main songwriters, co-wrote with some of the other members many of their well-known songs. This is not as well-known a song, but like Whiter Shade of Pale, songs like that. He co-wrote, and he died this year. He was with them, I think, most of the way through. But again, you know, these guys, they're kind of the unsung heroes sometimes. They're like, okay, Robert Hunter, if you're into the Dead, you know of that guy. I mean, he's well connected to their songs, but you know, something that's a little more obscure to some people, like Procol Harum, you know, he's kind of a little under the radar, maybe. And I think this is a great song. This song too, I didn't think about it at the time, but my read on it is it's related to death. It's these sailors. At first, it sounds like they're pirates taking over a ship, you know, but then they're just going on this journey that's on, and it sounds hellish. And then they end up on this beautiful white shore, and they're crying as they get off and they leave the boat behind. And then many moons and many Junes, or however he puts it, have passed since we've been here. And I've always thought it was like, you know, almost like a ghost ship, and they're finally reaching their ultimate destination. Um, that's just an interpretation of it. I got into these guys. I don't know, maybe I said this when we were making tapes, and then just totally, it was one of those bands you just totally just dive into. And so I had a ton of their songs that I liked, which sadly, very few of them got played on the radio, except maybe on album rock stuff back in the day. But this one I figured out later. Actually, we put on a tape. I'm certain we did, because that little seagull part at the end. I remember. I think that ended. It like ran out right in the middle of that on a tape, and I remember that. So I don't know if I broke a rule there, if we've done this with anything else, but there you go. Yeah.
I wasn't familiar with the song at all. I've heard a little bit about Procol Harum and, you know, obviously Whiter Shade of Pale and that kind of thing. But this song surprised me. I really found myself playing it multiple times and really liking it. Again, I liked that whole Hidden Treasures, Deja Vu with Salty Dog. I mean, those three songs in combination just were awesome. So again, don't know much about Keith Reed, or even who was the other person in, was it Gary Brooker, or was he in Procol Harum?
I think you're right. I think he was was he the singer and piano player? There was also somebody who played the organ.
Right,
I think you're right. He died last year, the year a couple years ago, I believe.
right. I remember hearing that. But no, it was great tune. I liked it a lot. Again, don't have much to say about it other than it was a good selection, and um, yeah, don't have much more to say about it other than I liked it a lot. Yeah, it did have kind of a theme of death and, you know, being alive. You know, yeah, it was kind of deep when you actually look at the lyrics and everything. So, but no, good tune.
No, I think I do remember those the bird sounds, and yes, you did break a rule there. You're banned for life. No, I remember playing this song for. I think it was on the one of those tapes that is long lost, I'm sure, at this point. But yeah, no, it's always interesting, you know, groups like Procol Harum who have the one big hit, and you think they're going to be big, and but that never materializes because of, and I'm thinking because of other groups. And how do you really, what genre did you put it? Are they prog rock? Are they regular rock? Are they, so, and I think they got kind of lost in the shuffle minus the big hit, but then they never really, gained that same. I mean, I couldn't name 3 other Procol Harum songs, and that's probably on me, but this song is really fantastic, and like I said, it goes with the theme. It really falls into place on this set list as well, or mixtape list, where all these songs are kind of together, and a little bit of mourning and a little bit of remembering and reflecting. So no, really good song, which kind of led into mine, the Ballad of Curtis Lowe, which is another song about a guy who they remember who passed away. Now, interesting enough, I wasn't going to put this on here, but I didn't. I didn't want to not recognize Gary Rosington from Leonard Skinner, who, of course, this is the Ballad of Curtis Lowe from Leonard Skinner, not one of their biggest hits. I was introduced. Obviously, I went through a Leonard Skinner phase. We all go through 38s, but all the hits that they had, and they did have a lot of tremendous songs, a lot of great hits, minus Freebird, obviously, in that. But he was one of the founding members, and I was actually introduced to this song because obviously Fish covers this song a lot, and you're just like, man, that is a fantastic song. And then you realize, oh, that's right, that's Leonard Skinner that they're playing. So, and of course, Rosington, infamous for surviving the plane crash that killed the rest of the band off pretty much, and he really thrived up until the bitter end, and kept playing with Leonard Skinner. So yeah, you got to give that guy credit. I mean, he had to endure a lot in his lifetime, but kept playing the music. It's the theme, I think, that Dave kind of points out. These guys just don't stop. This guy could, I mean, he survived a plane crash. You'd think, you're like, okay, I'm done with all this. But that just kept going and producing music and playing, for fans and stuff like that. So, and this song, of course, is one of those songs that, it, it's kind of the Blind Willie McTeal kind of a theme, a vein where, reflecting on someone. So a local hero, local legend. And I think the song is pretty fantastic. So that's why I picked it.
Yeah, I actually, I like the song a lot, and it really might seem out of place to, with the more rocking stuff they have, but it's really a sweet story about this kid who grew up willing to take beatings from his mom for going down to this place and giving this guy money to buy wine, so he'd sit there, this old blues guy, and play music. But it's such a sweet story. And it just goes to show, if you have preconceived notions about a band, like if you think of Alabama and Sweet Home Alabama and Freebird, it's like, you can see the live version of that. It's a big rebel flag in the back. It's like, a bunch of rednecks. It's not true. I mean, sure, there are people that listen to this music that would fit that category, but there's much more to them. And this song is definitely one of them. I will say, okay, so I went through a period where I couldn't stand them because of what I thought they represented. But then I grew to like them. And I even got to the point where now I actually really like Freebird. I mean, if you set aside, like kind of Stairway to Heaven, well, that's not a good example. A song that's overplayed, way played, and if you can set that part aside, it's actually it's a beautiful song. That's not what we're talking about here, but I just wanted to put that out there. But yeah, he survived that crash. It's amazing that anybody did. Went on. I think he had a band, the Rosington Collins Band. Collins was somebody from Skinner too, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know much about their history, but I really appreciate you putting this on.
Well, I was familiar with this song as well. I don't know that I ever owned the album or some of the albums, but certainly the top selections of Leonard Skinner, the airplay, the songs that have gotten airplay. But this was a song that I was familiar with. It's been in my playlist, and I've played it a lot of times. Uh, didn't really know much about Gary Rosington. Again, I knew about the plane crash and how they had to survive all that. I will throw out a question though to you, if and just because it's something that has been in the news about some of these older bands as well. What's your feeling? And my feeling is once the last founding members die off, and the fact that there's no members that are still in that band, but they still tour as that band, to me that seems kind of disingenuous, and that they're just trying to make bucks. What they really are is a glorified cover band playing that music, or somehow being allowed to play that music. They're not, but they can still produce music or put music out under that name, but there's nobody in the original band. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree. It's a cover band at that point. The why? Because it's easy to play good music. You can't go wrong. Like, oh, we're going to cover Leonard Skinner. Oh, you're going to play all this great music. Well, people love Leonard Skinner songs, so it's not hard to make music. But yeah, without an original member, it's just not. It's just like you said. It's just a money grab at that point, and they're a cover band. And just act like a cover band. There's plenty of cover bands that make a lot of money. So just say that. But to say that you're, like, we're, I guess Bachman Turner Overdrive is into that mess right now, and stuff like that. But I don't know. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I agree. Mostly agree. I think maybe one thing that would sway it a little bit for me would be if they're still putting out original material and there's quality to it. And there are some other bands that we like that have had lost significant members. Like the Allman Brothers, they lost, Dwayne obviously, and then some others split off, but they still were doing some great stuff. You could say that in a way, maybe for Little Feat. Lowell George was kind of that, he was the guy for that band, but they continued on. They had some songs. You have your opinion about whether they were good or not. But then there's bands or musical groups like the Temptations. I don't know if any of the original members are still alive, but you can still go see it. As far as I know, go see a Temptation song, and all they're doing, it's a cover band. It really, they may have overlapped some of the guys from the original members, and I guess that's the only reason they're able to keep that name. But yeah, no, I have a problem with that too.
Okay, well, my final selection, there were a couple of choices. I was trying to look to see who might still get on this list, and I knew Mike was big on Burt Bacharach. I was kind of counting on him to pick one of his songs, and then we were getting to the end, and I went ahead and said, I'm going to go ahead and put him on here, and just because of the body of work of this man, he's a legend. I mean, just one of the most prolific songwriters in my lifetime. And it's not that I can pinpoint every song that he did. He didn't perform many of the songs. He wrote songs for other people to have hit songs, and you don't see that as much. Yeah, sometimes in today's day and age, a songwriter might get some credit, but it's the star who's making that song is the one who gets all the credit now. But back in the day, people knew and respected Burt Bacharach, and obviously, I think I wrote down some of the things. So I don't miss some of them. Just a minute. Okay, yeah, I just want to. Okay, okay, so obviously we know that the Carpenters were huge. You wrote a lot of songs for the Carpenters, for Christopher Cross, Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. Dionne Warwick was a one that you wrote a lot of songs for her. Herb Alpert, This Guy's in Love with You. Neil Diamond, Heartlight. Ronnie Millsap, Any Day Now. I mean, just the list goes on and on and on. And so I almost thought about putting Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head because it's absolutely one of my favorite songs of all time, BJ Thomas. But to kind of stay with the Friends theme and what we're doing, I put on That's What Friends Are For. And I know it's one of those pretty commercial song, But having Elton John, Stevie Wonder, Gladys Knight, and Dionne Warwick singing together, I just love it. I love the message of the song, and so I thought I'd end my selection with "That's What Friends Are For." I guess Dionne Warwick gets credit for that being one of her songs and having her friends on that song, but it was written by Burt Bacharach.
Yeah. Now it's interesting that I just saw that tribute to Dionne Warwick in Lincoln Kennedy, or the Kennedy Center, where they talked about her, and it's interesting they came up to this point where they're like, well, she really when it took off when she teamed up with Burt Bacharach and did this song, which really skyrocketed her into a different stratosphere. And some say she might still live there. I'm just kidding. She's that's always funny how you have this interpretation of someone, and I'll remember her doing like those astrology. I don't know what she was doing anyway. But obviously a major talent, and like Dave said, I think that's kind of a lost thing now, where songwriters don't get the praise that they once did. They were stars in their own right. They'd make guest appearances on shows and stuff, and you just don't get that nowadays. Where it's like, oh yeah, let's bring out so and so who wrote all these songs for all these hits. These artists. So and back then that was something completely different. I mean, Leonard Bernstein, you knew Burt Bacharach, you knew these guys. They were celebrities in this time, and that's kind of a lost thing. And definitely delivering with this song, and it's just a great tune. You can't one of those where you almost cannot not like it, in the sense that unless you get sick of it, which I'm sure we heard this 1,000 times in our lifetime, but it's just one of those songs that is kind of infectious and really has a great meaning.
Yeah, I have well, I'm sure we all do, from our childhood, memories of a lot of these songs. And I guess they must have been played in my family a lot, because when I think back on those days, a lot of the songs of my childhood were written by Burt Bacharach. He did soundtrack. I don't know if you saw the original Casino Royale which is really not a very good movie. It's an ensemble thing. Peter Sellers, Woody Allen, whatever. He did the music for that. And one of the songs from that is "The Look of Love," which Dusty Springfield had a hit with, and it's such a I could see some guy putting on the hi-fi and turning down the lights and putting out the martinis and playing that song with some high hopes for what might be ahead of him. It's a great. All this music is great, and they had that Bacharach thing. It was like that sound. Once you've heard a couple of those songs, and then you hear something else play, one of his songs might come on, you're like, that sounds like a Burt Bacharach song. It was just something about, and he wrote the music. Somebody else wrote the lyrics. I think largely he may have written some, but that very distinctive sound. He went on to do a record with Elvis Costello, which I really like. I've always been an Elvis Costello fan, but this is not the borderline punk rock. I don't know what you call it, or new wavy Elvis. This is more, those ballads. And yeah, he worked with a lot of people, and I would have put one on if you hadn't done it here. That would have been, my song was next, and I would have put something on. I can't. I when I was thinking of it, I was struggling with what I was going to do, which one, because they're even more than people would mention before. It's like there's dozens of songs and they're all like really high quality. You may not be into that kind of stuff, but they're just so well written. Anyway, I could go on and on, but I won't. So my next song was by a guy who, well, they all passed this year, but he had been around a long time, Tony Bennett. And another one, maybe you could connect to, what's coming up, maybe the end of life or whatever. The best is yet to come. I've always loved this song. I don't know a lot about his catalog of songs. I think I don't know, Sinatra was Sinatra, and he had that swagger and cool, but Tony Bennett had a heart. There was like there was seemed like a nice guy in here, whereas Sinatra was, whatever talent, but he this song in particular, it was off of Tony Bennett's first record, and it which was I Left My Heart in San Francisco, which became his kind of signature hit. But this song, Sinatra had a bigger hit with this, but I'd take this version over at any time. I put it on every now and again, so it's on some of my playlists, like many of the Burt Bacharach songs. Oh, just the only other thing I was gonna say, there's nothing else to say. I was playing this playlist in the car when we went up to a wedding in Oklahoma and back, and people in my family members would comment on some of the songs. My daughter brought up that his last thing he did, his last project was with Lady Gaga, and they did a record together. And at that point, he was like, dementia was seriously taking its toll, and he couldn't remember things like her name. But when you put the song on, they were like so much a part of him. He would know the lyrics and just go right into it. And she told a story. My daughter told me about this. Lady Gaga told a story about this thing. It's like he was so moved by one of these songs that he remembered her name and said, "Oh, Lady Gaga." But yeah, supposedly he did a concert after they did this recording, those two together, and it's supposed to be a really moving thing. I have not yet seen it, but sorry he's gone. But he lived into his 90s, so hopefully he had a good life.
He was definitely one of those crooners that from days gone past with Sinatra and Dean Martin and those guys, and yeah, I was surprised that he lived. I mean, he was still touring and doing stuff in Vegas, right? And 96, he almost hit his 97th birthday. He was a month shy of his 97th birthday. Just an incredible lifetime musician, probably one that we didn't maybe appreciate because he wasn't in that realm of songs when we were listening in the 70s and 80s and 90s, right? The time had passed him by, but yeah, certainly his voice is very distinctive, and I enjoyed the pace of this song, and the I almost felt like I was on one of our other playlists that we did, where we did a little of that jazz crooning type of songs, on it. But no, great choice, great selection, and maybe the best is yet to come for him on the other side. If he did something with Lady Gaga, maybe he's jamming with Jimi Hendrix or something.
Yeah, no, Lady Gaga definitely introduced him to a lot of new people, and I remember that and doing the tour, and he did a whole album with duets and with her and stuff like that. So, but that's the question. Every time when this song would come on, I'd ask myself, why is Tony Bennett a part of our life? He really shouldn't be a part of our life. I mean, he was before our time and we listened to, but yet he's a part of our life for whatever reason. He persevered, and when you see him on TV and you say, "Oh, look, Tony Bennett. Oh, look," and of course, "Oh, I Left My Heart in San Francisco." Obviously, he was known for that for the longest of time, but he kept plugging away and evolving and getting involved with some of the younger people that he grew a whole nother audience, and he became relevant for us, even though you couldn't name probably any other artist from back then who stayed as relevant as he did. And it's interesting that our generation would know Tony Bennett, not as well as, like you said, or appreciate it as well as when he was in his prime, so to speak. But it is amazing that he almost, 60 years in the business and, still doing it. And again, goes back to the original theme that Dave said, these guys just keep doing it. It's in their life, and, and they don't stop, which is pretty amazing, that we could appreciate it for such a long time, and just goes to say that good music transcends, generations. And Tony Bennett was definitely one, up and like Mike said, up until the bitter end. I mean, he was playing concerts. So So I guess my final one to wrap it up, and I, of course, true to my jam band roots, I went with there's a saxophonist named James Casey, and in his later years he was with Trey Anastasia band, who's Trey is the lead singer for Fish, but they played "Set Your Soul Free," which I think kind of went with the theme of the whole death and just setting your soul free and letting go. And Casey was a member of the band since 2012. He played with Megan Trainor, The Roots, other people. He was kind of a session musician guy. And tragically he died. He was, I think, 58 or 57. It's like they said, young, you just don't know. When when you're gonna be afflicted, and he was a major part of that. So I put this song on because I think he really added a lot of dimension to the group. He was invited by Jennifer Hartswick to join the group, and I just thought the song was pretty appropriate.
Yeah, I I appreciate you continuing to expose us to a lot of the jam band stuff, but I kind of think of Trey Anastasio as kind of a notch above, the tremendous musicianship there, and this is no different. I really enjoyed this song, and I don't have a lot else to say about it, but I agree that it does really fit. Set your soul free. Is that right? Yeah, set your soul free. Really kind of fits into this. It's a great way to. You think that literally the words. That's a great way to end a thing, an in memoriam thing to people who've gone on, or wherever we go, whatever happens, the soul is free. So
Yeah, I liked it too, and I'm starting the jam band scene's growing on me too. I did look up on the internet though, and it says that he was 40 years
Oh,
old
yeah.
when he,
I
so
know
not even 50s, 40. So that's way too early. So very talented saxophonist, and I don't know what happened, but like when I put the songs on, I don't know if this ever happens to you, but I put it on and then it somehow I forget I did it. I put it on and then I have two songs, the same song repeated again on my playlist. And then if I go try to delete it or take it off, it takes both of them off again. And then I have to go back. So I'm just letting you know, when I've listened to this playlist, I've listened to that song twice at the end of every time. And I haven't corrected it because I like it so much. I just listen to it again. So good way to end the playlist for sure. And I'm starting to like Trey Anastasio as well. So good job, everybody. I think this is a really good playlist. As mentioned, there's people we've mentioned throughout that were missed. We probably could do another couple of playlists on the people that have passed away, and then we'll probably do the same again in 24. Don't want to think about it, but they're just like this year. Every year there's talented artists that pass away. So I enjoyed making the playlist and reminiscing about some great artists and their songs.